Welcome to the John Ford UFO Nightmare, a dedicated ufologist's journey through hell and our attempt to get him out.
Welcome again, Iron listeners, to the John Ford UFO Nightmare. Tonight we have an interview conducted by Marilyn and Dick Carlson and my co-host and researcher from Pang Radio, Ken Storage. What we'll do in the first segment is we will play the interview. It lasts about 28 to 30 minutes. We'll play that. We'll go to commercial break, and we'll be right back with our Brain Truster researcher. So hang in there, everybody. This interview was conducted essentially the middle of September by Marilyn and Dick Carlson and Ken Storage. So listen, a lot of good information in here, and we're going to discuss it second hour of the show. So stand by, everybody, and we'll go live with the interview.
Are you there, John?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I got Ken Storch on the line. John, meet Ken.
Hi, Ken. It's great to talk to you. Thank you for spending the time with us. Well, I can only spend 10-15 minutes.
Okay, well then we'll make our interview as fast as we can.
Okay.
You got a new attorney, is that correct?
Yes, his name is Stephen Metcalf, and he heads up a group of attorneys that take cases of people who have been wrongfully convicted.
All right. And he's out of New York, is that right?
His office is in Manhattan, but he practices on Long Island. Okay.
Just for your information, we copied all of the letters that you had written to Elaine Douglas and mailed them to Metcalf's office. So he has them now, and it'll give him a chance to review and look through your case and see where your frame of mind was at the time that you were incarcerated. And our opinion is that we feel that you don't belong there. So,
okay.
Yeah. Ken, do you have any questions you want to ask, John?
Yeah, John, have you been told officially what you've been diagnosed? What is your mental disorder? Well, I was never told officially by my criminal attorney, John Rouse. He was supposed to give me copies of the papers, and he never did. And he never told me what the diagnosis was. But after I got up here, about a year and a half after I was up here, I found out what I was diagnosed with, and I don't think I would have taken the plea if I had known what the diagnosis was. And what is that diagnosis officially? What did they tell you? Schizoid affective and paranoid delusional. That's exactly the same diagnosis that they gave John Hinckley, who shot Ronald Reagan, and John Hinckley is out. I didn't know if you knew that or not, but John Hinckley. I know. Okay. And so, yeah, that raises some issues with me. What kind of treatment have you been receiving, if any? Medication and participation in groups. No one-on-one sessions with psychiatrists. And so, even though the law says I'm supposed to receive 5 hours a week one-on-one sessions with a psychiatrist, they don't honor that commitment. John, you were in the court as a bailiff for 20-some years. I was in the court office of 21 years. And you carried a firearm during those 21 years, is that correct? That's correct. How come none of this symptoms showed up in the 21 years that you were a court officer? Because I don't have a mental illness. Yeah, I understand that. That was my whole point, is that all of a sudden, hey, what is your take on what happened with the Suffolk County DA? Why did they go after you? Was it because you were uncovering illegal dumping, or were you exposing corruption within the county? No, I was not doing either one of those. I had stumbled upon
another UFO crash that served as the basis for the setting of the forest fires, the East End forest fires, and that was done to cover up its retrieval and also to destroy the pine barrens.
To destroy the what?
Pine barrens.
The pine barrens. I'm not familiar with that. What are the pine barrens?
That is in Suffolk County. Some 300,000 acres of land are preserved as part of the watershed, and it's called the Pine Barrens.
Okay, I got you. I'm with you. Well, why would they want to destroy that?
Because John Powell gave the orders to have the forest fires set not near the crash site, but near the Pine Barrens in order to destroy and to make the land available to development.
Ah, okay. And that's what I'm looking for, is a motive why they came after you. It wasn't just because of the retrieval of the crash of whatever it was. It was the fact that there was serious real estate money involved in development, and they needed that land.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Now that makes a whole lot of sense. There's been some discussion on the radio show about the illegality of the warrant that was issued for the searching of your house and the wiretapping of your phones and everything. Were you aware at the time of your arrest that the warrant was faulty, that it was not right?
No, I was not aware of that. It wasn't until sometime after that when I got a copy of the warrant from Mr. Rouse, and I noticed that the date was June 13th instead of June 12th. And I brought it to Mr. Rouse's attention, and he checked his copy, and he said, "You're right." He said, "There's something wrong with the search warrant." Mr. Rouse filed 2 motions to have the search warrant vacated, and would deny that because the judge involved said that he originally did want the warrant issued for June 12th, but the June 13th date was a typographical error. Now, I am going to talk to Mr. Metcalf about this, and he has said that the search warrant can be vacated and pulled because of the illegalities.
Yeah, my background is I'm retired law enforcement out of Denver, Colorado, and I've written and issued, I can't begin to think the number of warrants. Now, I don't know how it is in Suffolk County, but Arapahoe County and Douglas County, in which I operated in, they had to be letter perfect or the judge wouldn't sign off of. You couldn't have the wrong date, wrong address, wrong people. You had to be cross your T's and dot your I's.
Well, apparently they didn't observe that when they drew the warrant up. They drew it up for the 13th of June, 1996, and it was executed with that date on it. Now, when they went to file the copy with the court, the detectives in charge of the investigation noticed the mistake and changed the date on the court file copy only.
The detectives did that?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Well, there's a whole lot of things about your case that stinks really, really bad. It doesn't pass the smell test. And the fact that how long have you been now incarcerated? 20 plus years?
21 years. 18 years at Mid-Hudson and 3 years in jail.
And one of my concerns was, and I brought this up on the radio show several times. After that many years, I was worried that your incarceration, that you were becoming institutionalized. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And I was worried about that. But Joe said, no, if you talk to him, you'll realize that he's not institutionalized. And I get the feeling now, having spoken with you in just a short period of time, that you're not institutionalized, that you still want to get out. And let me ask you this. If you were released tomorrow, would you seek civil course against the state and the county?
Definitely. And I have asked Mr. Metcalf to take the lawsuit. And there's going to be more than one lawsuit. There may be as many as 5. And we're going to be suing everybody and their mother's son.
Good.
Love it.
Good. And
they exceeded the authority of their search warrant when they seized the files of MUFON Incorporated, and they didn't have the authority to seize the files, let alone go through the files, and they're wide open for a lawsuit.
And was anybody else at MUFON under investigation, or were you the only one?
I don't know.
Okay. And do you know where those files are that they seized?
We have no idea.
Interesting.
I thought Preston Nichols got some of them back, but not all of them.
No, he did not.
Oh, okay.
He did not get any of them back.
All right. Interesting.
And when I was handcuffed and made to sit on my sofa in my living room, the detectives involved threatened to pistol whip me unless I told them where the files were. They wanted the files, and they wanted to go through them, and that seemed to be their main preoccupation.
You had dogs, and they tortured your dogs, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Oh.
What about the gentleman that was living with you? His name was Joe, too, right?
Joe Mazzucchelli, yes.
Yeah, Joe Mazzucchelli. How did you meet? Because it seems to me like he played the pivotal point in your arrest and in the warrant application.
He did. Mr. Mazzucchelli is an Israeli agent sent to protect me from assassination attempts organized by Mr. John Powell.
How do you know that? How did you find that out?
Because he wasn't alone. He had quite an entourage of people with him.
Did he stay at your house?
He stayed at my house for 3 months.
Oh, okay.
He did take some of your guns, though, and sell them. And he did.
Yes, he did.
And he did time for that, correct?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Was he also arrested on that night?
Yes, he was.
Okay. John, how often do you go to treatment? Is it once a week, once a month, once a day?
I go to treatment from 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning to 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, every day.
Holy moly. Have you seen any of your evaluation reports that the state has done on you?
I got several I'm going to be shipping out to Mr. Zapato within the next week or two. And I've sent him correspondence in the past pertaining to my evaluations, and he sent them to Rick Smith, and Rick Smith has made them public.
We have the Elaine Douglas files set up with all the files that Elaine had on you. They're also up on our website and the Elaine Douglas files website that we set up. So, if there's anything that you want made public, just let us know, and we'll post it up there on the Elaine Douglas files. Plus, I have Elaine Douglas files set up under a Facebook page, and I can post anything up there under Facebook. So
okay, I'll remember that.
Yes, so that's my avenues for making things public, and then Inception Radio has set up the monthly radio show that we all do with Ken Storch and M.J. Lucas and Richard, Bob Tarmac and Richard Smith occasionally, and Peter Moon, and so we've had quite a few people coming on and talking about your case, and and we try to keep everybody updated on what's going on with you.
Good. I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry I have to say this, but I have to apologize. I haven't been able to contact you as regularly as I should.
That's okay.
Because of my program schedule, I don't have the free time.
Yeah, well, and it's more important that you talk to Joe and take care of business rather than just calling and chit-chatting with us. But we'll try and do this again sometime when we can talk with you again when there's things going on. We'll just do like we did before. We'll make arrangements for you to call me, and then I'll call Ken and bring him in on the call. So
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to have visitors?
Yes, I am.
Day, or is it just strictly a visiting day and hour?
I'm sorry, the what?
Are you allowed every day, or is it just certain days?
Every day I can have a visit, and on the weekends also.
Okay.
John, do you have any evaluation reports from your superiors when you worked within the court system?
Not available. From what my brother told me when he took charge of my affairs and he had to check the house out, he said they took all your papers. So my personal papers were taken and possibly destroyed by them, and I don't have them anymore.
Huh. Well, yeah, I find it really curious that for 21 years you were apparently cohesive and sane enough to be a court officer and carry a gun, and then all of a sudden they find you schizophrenic delusional. And the state, the one that did the analysis, is that correct?
Yes.
Have you had a outside doctor evaluate your case?
Yes.
Do you know what the results of that was?
Somewhat favorable. The doctor I'm using on my challenge for my retention order has said that I'm not dangerous. So his testimony will be taken when we take the retention order in the court in October.
October of this year?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Do you have a date in October?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Have you had contact with Metcalf yourself?
I talk to him at least 2 or 3 times a week. He's coming up here in 2 weeks to see me. Has
he interviewed Joseph Zappardo yet?
Yes, he has.
Oh, great. Because Joseph is like a walking, talking information bank on your case. He knows everything that's going on, down to every little detail, and I sure appreciate what Joseph has done for us when we do our radio programming. So
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Just one thing. I don't know where you got the idea that I had information pertaining to corruption and misdeeds by counting figures. That is a complete lie, and it's a falsehood.
Okay.
And I want to set the record straight. My interest was UFOs, and their interest was to find out what I knew about the crash out in Riverhead.
I think our point may have been, John, that there was corruption going on in the county, even though you had nothing to do with it or really knew exactly what that corruption was. There's evidence that there was corruption, and that was that corruption that set you up. So I think that's kind of where.
No, that was not the reason why they did it. was a threat to them because of my knowledge of what happened with the forest fires.
Okay. All right. Well, good. I'm glad we got that straightened out.
Well, and that in itself is a powerful motive, because you're talking serious money on development of the pine. Would you call that area the Pine
Barrens?
Pine Barrens, right? Hey, did the development go forward on the Pine Barrens?
No, they haven't done anything with it. The land lies foul. The forest didn't come back, and it is, for all practical purposes, barren and unproductive.
Wow.
Were you involved with Brookhaven at all on this crash?
Brookhaven Labs?
Yes.
No.
Okay, because apparently the Brookhaven had their own fire department, and it has been said that they were also dispatched to this fire that had occurred. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't.
Interesting. Okay. So you didn't have any input or knowledge about Brookhaven Labs concerning this crash or any of the UFO sightings that were going on?
No. We got the information on the crash through the efforts of Dottie and Gary Tritt, two MUFON members, whose secretary had spoken to a gentleman by the name of Stephen Marinara, who was the witness who discovered the crash and reported it to the FBI. And he was silenced by the FBI. He won't talk to anybody. And it just was the Tritt secretary who told us the story. So our evidence for the UFO crash is tenuous, and really we don't have that much about it.
Well, there's a photograph that was in Elaine's files. It almost looks like an alien in it, in a burned out, near a burned out log. And you said, "Do you see what I see?" And it was titled Otto. Do you recall that photograph?
No.
Interesting. It was in Elaine's files. I don't know where she got it, but it was stuck in your file, the John Ford file, which is interesting.
Well, we had photographs of the alien bodies from the South Haven Park crash.
Okay.
And we had quite a display of them, and we also had it on videotape. And Elaine was to our conference we had on the subject of South Haven Park, and she may have gotten the photograph from Preston Nichols when she was there.
Yeah, I've tried to locate the video, and I'm totally unable to find the video. We obviously missed it when we went and got Elaine's files.
We don't have any copies available. 2 years after I was in Mid-Hudson, Steve Ivarone, our acting chairman, took possession of our tape archives, which the Suffolk County Police did not seize, and his house was burglarized and ransacked, and they stole our complete archives of tape recordings, and amongst them was the tapes of the South Haven Park crash.
Wow.
So they've probably been destroyed, and we will never see them again. But at least we had them, and at least we made it public.
Yeah. Wow.
John, were you physically on the crash site, and were you working for the Suffolk County courts at the time you were investigating the crash?
Oh, which one?
The South Haven one.
We've been able to document 5 UFO crashes on Long Island in the past 25, 30 years.
And the South Haven one, were you currently?
I used to live 1.5 miles from South Haven Park. I heard the helicopters that night. I saw the forest fires, and I was going to go out and investigate, but my mother had just had cancer surgery, and she couldn't be left alone, so my hands were tied.
John, at the time of your arrest, were you currently employed by the Suffolk County Court system?
No, I had retired.
Oh, okay. That clears up an issue for me. Okay. All right. How long have you been retired?
Since 1993.
93.
And you were arrested in 96, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's correct.
So 3 years later.
Okay. Well, I guess what I don't understand is why Reno was your first attorney. Is that correct?
No, he was my second.
Oh, okay.
Roush was his first attorney.
Roush was your first.
And he was a lousy attorney. He did nothing to help me.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
He was the one that advised that you take the mentally ill plea, right?
Yes. He told me I wasn't going to be here that long. There was very little wrong with me, and he said maximum 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So he was wrong, and he knew differently, and he steered me to take the plea because he had been corrupted by outside forces.
Do you think the DA was directly involved in your case in terms of...
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. The night I was brought over to the district attorney's office, Mr. Caddison, the DA, personally threatened me and said, "I'm going to get you."
Those were his exact words?
Yes.
And the conspiracy part of it was that you were going to put radioactive material in toothpaste. Is that how I understand it?
Yes.
Well, I bet it's so ridiculous.
There's no way it could have fit inside a toothpaste canister, and
I don't know how
besides the radioactive material that they made an issue of was harmless.
Yeah, it'd take 25, 30 years for somebody to become ill with it.
Yes, that's true. Okay, I'm going to have to get going.
Well, thank you, John. We appreciate your agreeing to do this, and we'll see to it that you get a copy of this interview.
Okay, good enough.
Take care. We're pulling for you.
Okay, Marilyn. By the way, how is your son doing?
He is doing good. He's walking. He lives about a half a mile from us, so we can look after him. So he's living on his own. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, thanks for asking.
Okay, dear. All right. God bless you, and I will be in touch with you in the future.
Okay. Bless you, too.
Nice talking with you, John.
Take care, Ken. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And there you have it. That was a 28-minute interview conducted by Marilyn and Dick Carlson and Ken Storch back in mid-September with John. Right after the break, we're going to have our brain trust come on, so stand by, everybody. Welcome back, everybody, to the John Ford UFO Nightmare, the interview. I'm joined by fellow researchers Ken Storch tonight, one of the interviewees. How you doing, Ken?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Thanks, MJ.
And we have Joe Zapardo on there. How you doing, Joe?
Hi, how you doing, MJ?
It's great to have you, and we're blessed with Rich Smith, who showed us some awesome hot air balloon pictures today. Thanks for sharing that, Rich.
No problem. Yeah, good to be here.
Good to be here. Thank you. Now, Ken, we just played the interview between John, you, Marilyn, and Dick, and that was about a 28-minute interview you did last September. So what were your thoughts on John? I mean, talking to him firsthand.
Well, initially I was apprehensive when he first came online, only from the standpoint, and I was concerned that John may have been institutionalized. And what that means is it's kind of like the Stockholm Syndrome, being incarcerated for over 20 years. The adage is 3 hots and a cot. And his day is planned out for him. He doesn't have to take any responsibility. His meals are served to him, and he has his time is taken up by whatever the incarceration or the research mental health facility deals out to him. And that's not the case. After spending a little over 20 minutes with him, it became very apparent to me that John, and I knew this with the letters that he had corresponded with Elaine Douglas while he had been arrested, that he was very lucid and he's sane. And I'm convinced more than ever, and granted, I am not a psychiatrist by any stretch of the imagination, but he answered all the questions that I put to him, and they were legitimate answers. He knows what's going on. He knows where he wants to go, and he wants to get out. So, to you, Joe, I guess I eat a little bit of crow because, in the past, when we've been on the air and talking about it, I was concerned that he may have been institutionalized and that he wasn't wanting to be a free man. But that's not the case at all. And you're right. After talking with him, I got it.
I pretty much assured you.
Yep.
I pretty much assured you that once you speak with him, you'd understand.
Progressive presents Mindflowness with Flow.
Before you lies a beautiful meadow. In that meadow, Progressive Direct has placed its auto insurance rates alongside those of competitors. You select the lowest rate and feel a great sense of calm. A great sense of...
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates so you can rest easy. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Dan, that's all he talks about is getting out. When he calls here, he tells me what the attorney's doing, who I should call, this, that, the other thing. But it's always about getting out. It's always looking forward, So I knew once you spoke with him that you'd know right away where this guy is coming from, and you'd know exactly what you were dealing with, because this is a perfectly sane individual with, that just got caught in a bad situation, bad political times.
Oh, I think he was set up, most definitely. I mean, based upon what we know and the circumstances surrounding his incarceration, his arrest, the search warrant, the arrest warrant, all of that, I think he was set up. And I think his first attorney, Reno, is that who that was?
The earliest one he had was Rouse.
Rouse, I'm sorry.
Now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Did him a real disfavor, and I'm not convinced that was not intentional.
Right.
Exactly. There's some support. There's some support to that as well from several of the people that John worked with at the state Supreme Court in Riverhead, and they actually overheard one or two of them overheard someone say, actually John Powell speak to someone saying, "I want this guy." With John Rouse right there, I want him locked in a room and throw away the room. Okay,
right.
I mean, that's a quote that I heard directly from a guy that worked with John, and they were protecting him from being poisoned. They were bringing him food. They wouldn't bring him into court shackled, the way they were told to. They basically, they didn't violate any direct orders, but they wouldn't. They said no. There's no need to bring him in shackled. He's a coworker. He's not going to fight us.
I was telling MJ. I think that in fact I'm 99.9% convinced that the interview that we did with him was not only being taped, but it was being listened to. Because I could hear clicking on my end of the phone, and having worked in wiretaps, that's a clear indication that somebody's tapping into the line on his end.
Right.
And I suspect that he was on a regular phone. I don't think he was on a cell phone. He was probably on a phone that was in the facility.
It's a pay phone in the facility, and they disabled the pay phone part of it a month after we started doing this radio show, and made it available for free outgoing calls.
That was awful white of them.
Trustees, yeah, right. A month later, but the thing is, if they on the line and they're paying for the call, they can legally, technically, record the.
Yeah, having worked in the law enforcement career field, anytime you're incarcerated, either incoming calls or outgoing calls are going to be taped. And that's just a matter of security. I suspect that it's not any different in this case. However, it's probably of extreme interest to them who he's talking to, and why is he talking to them? Because as far as I know, this was his first interview since he's been incarcerated, since we've been doing the radio show.
Since we've been doing the radio show, but I think Rick and/or Peter may have spoken with him on a different show. Is that correct?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Marilyn, are you there? Well, she was.
Well, we accidentally hit the wrong button. I'm here.
I hit the red button.
Anyway.
Welcome back.
Well, we were evaluating, Marilyn, the conversation and interview that we had with John Ford, and we were at the point where I was saying that I could hear a clicking noise on my end. Every once in a while I could hear a click, which indicates to me that they were probably taping it and were extremely interested in who John Ford is talking to, and why is he talking to him outside of the facility.
They let him talk a lot longer than what he indicated when we first got on. He said he only could talk maybe 10 minutes or so. And gosh, how long was the conversation? 27 minutes?
28 minutes, I think, is how as long as we had him on there.
Yes. So they let him talk and talk and talk and talk, which was very surprising to me, because I really expected just a very short interview with him.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd get that long. And Neutron, I saw you in chat. They're probably listening to this show too, knowing that this was going to be the topic of conversation, and that we were going to play the interview with John. Absolutely, I'm sure they're logged into it. They'd be a fool not to.
Yes. Well, yeah.
I'd be willing to bet a lot of people are surprised at how lucid John sounds. I heard parts of the interview. This is the first time I heard it, and I speak with him almost every day, but to hear him coming, over a cell phone, which is rare, I usually go landline, and, hear him answering questions. He's dead on. He's not, lagging.
He was ready to answer those questions. There was no stumbling over the questions. There was no pauses. He was very lucid in everything that he talked about. He knew exactly how to answer something, and it's when somebody.
Oh, he was very well spoken. His train of thoughts followed. It was easy to follow along his train of thought and what he was, the points that he was trying to make.
Sure.
I didn't find anything, and I just want to make this real quick. The district that I worked in had a mental health facility, and I probably got dispatched there, maybe 2 or 3 times out of a 4-day work shift. And I'm sure our department was there every day, even on my days off, and had to deal with a number of delusional, schizophrenic personalities that either they didn't take their medication or they were coming in for help or whatever the case may be. And I didn't find John to be delusional or schizophrenic or any of that.
No.
Very, very lucid, very sane. And not at all.
He's never, ever displayed anything that was delusional to me. And those letters that we sent to his new attorney, you've seen them, Ken, that he is not delusional even back in the 90s when he started writing to Elaine all the way up till 2007.
Yeah, I brought that up before you came back on, Marilyn, is that, the letters that he wrote to Elaine Douglas, and that was one of the clues for me. And it was obvious that Elaine Douglas knew that he was lucid and sane also because of the communications that they were having back and forth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this whole scenario sucks and smacks of.
Well, it does. It stinks what they did to him. Maybe his first attorney really believed that he was only going to be there maybe 2 or 3 years, and then he would be out, and he wouldn't lose his pension because he hadn't been convicted of a crime. But I honestly think if he'd have just agreed to go ahead and go to trial, they would not have had enough evidence to show that he,
well, that comes down to his initial attorney, Rausch.
Yes.
Okay, and there's something in that whole relationship that is not right, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Yeah.
Well, he's friends, obviously, with Powell. Powell spoke with him directly.
Yes.
I mean, you have somebody that's accused of conspiracy to commit murder, and you have one of the alleged victims speaking to the attorney for that person. That's unheard of, right? And he's telling him, make sure this guy goes, gets locked in a room and they throw away the room. Come on, there's something not right there. And then all of a sudden, not only is Powell arrested for multiple things, but the other guy, Fred Towell, and the only one who didn't come under federal, jurisdiction was the former police officer. What's his name? The guy from Brookhaven Town, the third guy, Gazzola.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing is, he had to leave the New York City Police Department for cause or be subject to arrest. And that was a long time ago, granted, but he came out to Long Island, and they don't call it Brookhaven for nothing.
Huh.
Right. So, he basically buys and sells jobs. He puts people in no-show jobs and things, and he's dead now too. John outlived them all, and I'm glad he did.
Marilyn brought up a good point there. First of all, in over the years, whenever I've spoken with him over the phone, he's always sounded perfectly fine, and genteel, and nothing threatening about him whatsoever.
He's a very soft-spoken person.
Yeah, and then the part that Marilyn brought up about him just throwing in the towel and going for the trial. Well, unfortunately, you remember some time ago when we did that interview with Joe Mazzucchelli?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
There was a key factor in there. When you're under the gun like that and you're being gang rushed, okay, and then you have your own trusted or supposedly trusted, allegedly trusted friend, Joe Mazzucchelli, who got interrogated first, coming out to John and saying, "John, there's no way we can win this. We're screwed." Yeah. What choice is John going to make at that point?
Right. And then they threatened him with something that was extremely important to him, and that was the loss of his pension.
Mm-hmm.
So.
First they knew that. They had to know that.
Sure.
Where's he getting his money from? Well, he was working the court till a few months ago, and boom, all of a sudden, he's collecting a disability pension. but he's not doing anything. And he was legitimately injured. I seen him. I saw him, before and after the injury. I mean, he was white. He didn't look well, and it had nothing to do with a nervous or depressive condition. The guy was physically ill.
Well,
couldn't get out of a chair.
And that was one of the questions, and I'm sorry I didn't ask it, was what kind of medication do they have him on, and what kind of medication did they have him on, if any?
It doesn't sound like to me he's on any kind of psychotropic drug because of how he expresses himself. If you know enough about people on psychotropic drugs, they stumble over their words. They can't maintain a full sentence. Sometimes they just trail off with their sentences. Their concentration levels are very poor. And
I get telling him. No, he's on Risperidol and Visceral at night. Visceral is basically, it's not even a controlled substance. It's like they give it to children. It's basically an histamine. It's something similar to Benadryl. Okay.
It's probably to make him sleep.
But the other one is an antipsychotic, but it's a low dose, and he's been taking it for years, and he feels like he has to fight it, to maintain a clear head, and he's doing a pretty damn good job of it. Yeah. It's not helping him. It's not really hurting him now at this point, but I don't think it's necessary that he be made to take that. If he refuses it, they'll just inject him with it, and probably a lot more. Yeah. So he just goes along and plays their game and obeys orders, and is waiting for his freedom, and it's at hand.
The other part of this whole thing is I find it interesting that each time he has an evaluation, and his evaluations come up once every 2 years, correct? So he's
once a year or every 2 years.
Yeah. So in the 21 years he's been incarcerated, he's had numerous evaluations, and they always come back to saying the same thing. And this last one, but it was an attorney that was it Reno that brought in this other attorney? I can't remember.
Well, we had let's see, Andrea Rizzoli.
Yeah.
And when she messed up in faxing something in, after midnight on the day that the law changed, John got all upset about it. He found, I don't know where he found Reno from. He got Reno on the case. Then Reno has just been dragging his feet and kind of just playing along with the mental health court game. Yeah. And John's tired of it. And, we got proactive, and we got an attorney that's really hustling right now,
Well, the last psychiatrist that he saw said he was not a danger, which means...
Yes, his new report does the same thing.
Yes. So...
report. He's due to testify as well.
Yeah.
So, they have the report. They know he's going to testify. He's on the list. There's no secret.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they said about Hinckley, that he's no longer a danger to society, and they let him out. So, and I think he was diagnosed the same as John, as a delusional psychotic. So why isn't John out?
Yeah, well, he committed a crime and admitted to it. John didn't commit a crime and would admit to being mentally ill. All right, and I think Peter Moon a couple of times said, "Just play." He should tell them what they want to hear. Okay, and John is like a man, very principled man. I know principles can come, can go to extremes, but I was willing to do something very similar in the 1980s during a divorce, custody hearing, and so forth. I chose to go to jail rather than pay my drug-addicted wife child support. That's a whole other issue, but the thing is, I can understand that John would not want to say, okay, I'll sign the paper saying I was mentally ill, but I really wasn't. He won't do that, okay? He won't say that there's anything wrong with him, and there isn't anything wrong with him. I can understand that.
He took the plea deal, and it was the plea of mental a mental illness plea, doesn't that by the law imply that he admitted to being mentally ill?
Not necessarily. I don't think so. I think if he's declared mentally ill by, I don't know, it's 2 or 3 psychiatrists, they can go in and, his attorney can go in and plead for him, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he was, or that he committed a crime. He never admitted to doing anything.
No.
He didn't have his day in court. He wasn't convicted by a judge, a jury. He was just sent right to the executioner, so to speak. So that's
he took a plea bargain. He took a plea bargain at the advice of his attorney, John Rouse, which he was misadvised, but he accepted it. And that is a compromise of his principles right there in order to avoid the siphoning off of his pension. He was trying to protect his pension.
That's what my point was, is that because he took the plea deal, it's basically the same thing as saying that, there's something wrong with me.
Well, he lied about that.
Yes.
And so he's now in the system because he lied. And the only way you have to live up to that lie, or completely countermand the entire process, which is not so easy to do because he's in the system. Yeah. He put himself in the system with bad advice.
Well, he caught between a rock and a hard place. What is he going to choose? Go in front of a jury and a judge until he's convicted of something. He loses his freedom and he loses his pension, or he spends what he thought was from a couple of months to a year and a half or 2 years in a psychiatric facility. He comes out a free man, and he's got his pension and goes on his way.
It was his that gave him.
It seemed like a lesser of two evils to me.
Yeah.
Well, the way it seemed, but he's still not out. It's in other words, he would have been better off to be gotten out and be broke than be where he is now.
In hindsight, you can see that agreeing to what his attorney advised him to do was not the right choice. But at the time, the advice from his attorney was take the plea deal, and then of course he has Mazzucchelli that comes and says, we aren't going to win this, and that probably affected his decision making as well. So
he was also being drugged. He was also being drugged during this time.
Yes,
that's right. That's a good point. And Mazzucchelli was lying to him and continued to lie to him.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't testify against him. And they had it out for Mazzucchelli because Mazzucchelli did not want to be known as a rat, did not testify against John, didn't sign anything. And it was all based on psychiatric, second and third hand psychiatric testimony. I think the document's in the Elaine Douglas file, the original document. Am I correct?
He was interviewed by a psychiatrist, I think more than one, when he was in jail.
Right.
And I remember they portrayed him as, having a large amount of socks and underwear stored, like as if he was waiting for the apocalypse. He did have a...
God.
Apparently he did have a lot of stuff that he stored, but they were saying, they were saying that this was an imbalanced state of mind.
Like doing laundry.
And he also, when he spoke to me when he was in the jail, he had the idea that he was really going to blow the minds of these shrinks by telling them about UFOs and really opening their minds. He didn't realize, he misestimated his audience. They just treated him as a Looney Tune.
Yeah, seriously. And I think they picked him as a scapegoat, probably because of that. They could point to him and say, hey, this guy believes in UFOs. He doesn't only believe in them, he chases them down. He interviews people that say that they saw them. So, right away, his character is suspect just by that fact alone. Right. And it shouldn't be. All right.
Let me ask you a question, guy. I came a little bit late. I was at the movies, and I came in. Did John participate in this show already?
Yep.
So I missed that.
28 minutes of an interview between John, Ken Storch, and Marilyn Carlson. And Marilyn called me up. I set it up with John. I told her to call Marilyn. They went on a three-way connection, and he was able to stay on instead of the usual 10 to 15 minutes. I think, what was it, 28 minutes?
28 minutes.
Say, something like that.
Yeah.
And they played that. That was the first half hour of the show. I missed it. I patched in on Skype afterwards.
Well, we have it in Dropbox.
I think probably Inception Radio's got it too.
Inception Radio has it.
Okay.
Joe has it. And so, I mean, Joe can email it to you if he's got your email address. So.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, Joe and I communicate on Facebook.
I think what was interesting in the interview was, we've been kind of going down this railroad track about illegal dumping and and corruption and those sort of things, and yet John in the interview said no.
He knew nothing about. He knew nothing about corruption. So I found that very interesting. But yet,
if you look at his statement to the press, it contradicts that.
Yeah.
It blatantly contradicts it.
Yeah.
Well, he knew there was something going on. He couldn't be specific about it.
Yeah. I was
there was
really
something about
surprised.
Pine Barrens, land deals, and so forth.
Yeah.
After the fact, he knew about it, and at the time he didn't. But it pointed fingers at a lot of dirty people for a lot of different things. And they didn't know what he didn't know.
Well, I maintain that John was involved in something, and I still believe this. I think he got involved in something that he had no idea what it was, and the powers to be on the other end didn't know that he didn't know. He's out there and walking around interviewing people and talking to people about this fire that took place. And it was a UFO crash, and it's drawing attention. It drew national attention, by the way. Okay, and so those criminal element, whether it was the mob or a combination of corrupt politicians and the mob on the illegal dump, he might not have known about it, but they didn't know that. They didn't know what he knew.
He was so close to the site.
Right.
You have to remember that. He was close to the site. He had a Geiger counter. He had a team of investigators out there. They didn't know what he did or didn't know.
And that's why they took his notes and his files.
And they wanted rap sheets, if you recall. Rap sheets is what they were looking for. I think it was in the warrant.
Criminal history.
About rap
criminal
sheets.
Histories. Yeah, it was criminal. They worded it as criminal histories. If I'm right.
They want the criminal histories that he had on other people or thought he had on other people. I don't know that he did.
I don't think
he did. I have never seen anything like that in the file.
Well, we don't, and we don't know because his files were confiscated, and who knows where they are? They may have been destroyed, or they may have been put in a safe place somewhere. But we don't know what John had, and I maintain that's why they took his UFO files. They weren't interested in UFOs; they were interested in what he knew and what he had found out, and who he was talking to.
Yeah,
he was targeted. He was obviously targeted. And set up, and he was considered an enemy of John Powell, and John Powell was working against him, as was Catterson and all of their minions.
Right. Reading all the write-ups in Elaine Douglas's files on John, those Republicans in that county were not very happy with him because his mom, I guess, ran for some Republican office. John was a Republican.
Conservative Party. He was involved in the Conservative Party.
Yeah. But he raised a lot of cane with him.
Yes, he did.
So that could have been some kind of vendetta there too.
Well, he was a vendetta. This was not about a vendetta. This was about damage control and eliminating him, as a target. Mm-hmm. It was not a vendetta driven. It was, he was a potential danger to these characters. And, we do know that John Powell had mob connections because of the conviction he later endured. And so the one thing is, while he had the DA and John Powell working against him, who were both in collusion together, and John Rouse was tied to John Powell. They
Right.
later turned up as, involved together with the highway department and contracts and whatnot. But Mazzucchelli also profiles as a informant and agent provocateur who's setting up John. If you read John's whole thing, telling him he has diplomatic immunity and telling him he's from the Mossad. Now, this is utterly ridiculous.
It is
a Mossad agent, but John apparently believed it.
And he still does.
Well, he's spoon-fed information every day. Joe is living there. You have to understand that. Joe is living in John's house. He's spoon-feeding him bits and pieces of information. Mm-hmm. He's right about a bunch of stuff, and he's complete bullshit on this, okay? But he was right about other stuff, okay? So John had a tendency to believe him, all right? Against everybody.
He still believes that Mazzucchelli was a part of the Mossad.
Well, if he was an asset to them. He was an asset to somebody. Somebody said he was a police informant. He got very hostile to me when I asked him the question. I didn't tell him he was. I asked him the question, and he threatened me.
I remember that. And he also wouldn't give me a direct answer about the guns or about that guy, Arthur Reba, who he sold the guns to.
Right.
Okay. And how he was tied in. I mean, he lived in Manaville on North Street. So did this guy Koch, who was working. He was this assistant district attorney. Okay. So Reba got arrested. The serial numbers for John's gun are obviously they're on the guns. So it comes back to John, and Joe is in the house, and he's introduced to Koch by Arthur Reva. I mean, they live 2-3 houses away from each other, and he lets the guy in, and they start recording. He starts saying, "What about this guy Powell? What about this guy Powell? What about this guy?" Etc.
Yeah.
But nobody could possibly believe that you're going to get radium from someplace and then put it in toothpaste and sugar packets and then sneak into somebody's house. I mean, for God's sakes, John is an expert marksman. He could have blown these people away from half a mile away. Nobody would know about it.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
And he didn't have to say anything to anyone. But that's not what he was accused of. Okay, they spoon-fed this pile of horse shit to people, and it was believed because of the way it was fed. And the same thing with Mazzucchelli. He spoon-fed John long enough and direct enough bad information, and John believes it. Probably does to this day. I didn't hear the whole interview.
It does, based on our information, because Ken asked him a question about Mazzucchelli, and he said in the recent interview that Mazzucchelli was the Mossad.
So this is a big problem with John. Because John, you can't say somebody is an agent of the CIA or the Mossad or anybody else unless you can back it up. You can suspect them. You can say you were told, and he does not make this delineation. And this is a big problem with him. He insists on saying...
You're absolutely right on that.
Guys,
I want to ask you a question. Do you know anything about... John had at one time said to me that there was a shootout behind his house. Is that correct?
Joe?
I've heard the story.
Yeah, okay.
But I don't know if there was a shootout or not, or if they were just testing fireworks out at the, right behind his house, they had Grucci fireworks testing grounds. I don't know if there was a shootout. Maybe Mazzucchelli told him there was a shootout, get down, whatever, set off some firecrackers. But John should have known the sound of gunshots.
Oh,
I mean, he used to go to the range. He had to take a firing, test every so often to recertify so he could carry a sidearm, in court. He was a uniformed court officer. So I think that John would have known the sound of gunshots, unless somebody's just out there with a gun firing it enough to scare the hell out of John. And Mazzucchelli was in on it. I don't know.
Did he say what the shootout was about?
He didn't really. I don't really know if he specified. Probably in that 78 or 80-page memorandum that they put out. It must be specified somewhere in there. Apparently, Mazzucchelli told him that there were people out there on one side to protect him, and other people coming there to assassinate him or shoot at him or scare him. And not to worry about anything, that he was taking care of everything. So if somebody, if you convince somebody that they just saved your life, you're probably going to believe them about other things too. I mean, that's human nature.
Sure.
Right? Granted, John's gone a little bit too far off that way, but I don't know. I really don't know if that took place. I wasn't there. I am not going to take Mazzucchelli's word.
No.
So,
I'd like to hear John's side. I'd like to hear John's side of it.
Did you discuss that with him, or
no? Not. But you know what? It's a question, right, Ken? It's a question that we said we would ask him about because we'd like to do another interview with him within the next couple months or so. So because this interview with him sparked some more questions that Ken and I had. So, are you there, Ken?
I is.
You is, okay.
I'll set it up.
Okay. So,
whenever it's convenient for you guys, I'll set it up. It's not a problem.
I
like to work with people.
Between now and December, things are going to be a little crazy for us. I'm going to be having some surgery, and so. I'd
like to get Peter on there too, because Peter has some of the hard questions that I try to explain as best I understand them.
Yeah,
but Peter has some very good points, and I'd like to hear how John responds to Peter. Okay,
my cell phone. I did that interview. John called me. And then my cell phone has a add a call thing. And that's when I prearranged with Ken. When I call, please pick up the phone. He knew I was going to be calling. And so then I brought Ken in on our conversation. And that's how I got the three of us together. I would have to experiment with it and see if I can bring a fourth person in on the conversation.
Well, let me say in the past when I addressed John on the private conversations when he would call me, pretty much weekly or bi-weekly from Mid-Hudson, I would said this to him several times, and he would sort of, yes, I understand. And then he'd kind of go back to evidently he wants to be right about this. He wants vindication. He does not just want to get out of jail. Out of incarceration. He wants vindication, and he wants people to believe him. And he's too convinced about his own rightness with regards to the intelligence agencies. And he makes more of a point than that than he should.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Yeah.
And this is his own, so to this degree, he's keeping himself. He's put himself behind bars as much as his adversaries have.
Peter, I wish you could get that across to him. Speak with him directly, okay?
I have many times.
I would like you to speak with him. It would be great if you could get more, if you could understand why he's taking this act.
If you read the letters that he wrote to Elaine Douglas, she was frustrated with him too on this very issue, right, Marilyn?
She gave him some really good
advice. She really did. She gave him some really good legal advice, and he just arbitrarily dismissed it.
Yeah, he did.
Just out of hand, dismissed it? Told her, no, I'm not doing that, or did he give a reason?
He just said, no, he's going to stick with the attorney that he had. She wanted him to dump the attorney that he had.
And he should have.
And he should have, but he
that
didn't.
was Rizzoli? When he had Rizzoli?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
it was probably good advice.
yeah. And, you know, she saw the writing on the wall, and there was some advice on what he should and shouldn't talk about.
And hey, just for all of our listeners and everybody in chat, that's a lesson to be learned. If you have to deal with a legal beagle, you get to interview them too, and it's very important. And I think that's where John missed the boat. And it may have been because, you know, being 20 years as a bailiff in the court system, he took the advice of his attorney, Rausch, and Reno at that time.
Reno was not his attorney at that time.
No, I know.
Later on.
Yeah, but he was worthless as tits on a boar hog too. I'm sorry, we had him on the show, and I was not impressed. Okay, well, I call it as I see it, and it's important that you interview the attorney also and ask them poignant questions that's relative to your case, you know. And unfortunately, John didn't do that for whatever reason, and I suspect it was because he was involved in the court system, and he just took it as gospel. Yeah. That those two legal beagles wouldn't sell him down the drain, which in fact is exactly what they did.
Yeah.
Well, I think the main problem with Reno was not so much that he was an idiot, but that he is not used to handling a case with this many strings tied to it. He was in over his head.
Yes.
And Andrea Rizzoli was too.
Yes.
Hey, Peter, remember my question or my thing about the Republicans, and you said it wasn't a vendetta? This is out of the Washington Post, January 11th, 1998. And, of course, it's a whole page here, but it says, in the 1970s and 80s, Ford became active in local politics, forming a conservative party club in Suffolk County, supporting his mother in her bids for highway superintendent and county legislator, and running for several party positions himself. Frustration over Suffolk County's Republican rule caused him to quit politics, but his hatred of county Republicans never left him. That was the side I was coming from.
Well, vendetta may be on John Ford's behalf, but these people aren't into vendettas at their level. They're into him as a target for political trouble. They could care less about getting back at John Ford.
No, they just wanted a scapegoat. They wanted a really good scapegoat and somebody that they didn't care for.
Yeah.
And he was it. He was it down and sideways.
And their fear was that they were going to get caught with their, being tied to the fires, you know, because, you know.
This was multi-layered. This was a multi-layered problem.
Yes, you're right. So
it involves corruption. It involves criminal activity. It involves UFOs, UFO investigations, and these outrageous fires.
Yes. And in another sense, it involved the laboratory that was down the road, because I do believe that some of those supposed UFOs that crashed were probably missiles that they were testing and that they were failures.
Well, Northrop Grumman's right there, too.
Yeah, Northrop Grumman was right there. So
right, and that's where the radium came from. The stuff that they put in his truck.
Right.
I mean, they admitted it the following day, the day after the arrest. They said, I mean, he's got an unlocked, it's a little Mazda truck. Okay, I've ridden in it. I've seen it, and it has a camper cap, and that thing is always unlocked. He never bothered to lock his cars or his truck. He had it parked in front of the house, and that's where they got there early. They loaded it up with stuff that they were supposed to dump from Grumman Corporation. They probably had hundreds of those canisters. There's only a few grams of, if there's even a gram of depleted metallic radium in there, in a 25-pound, coffee can-sized container. supposedly 4 or 5 of those in his car, and that's all they found. They didn't find anything in the house.
Well, John wanted a can of radium to test his Geiger counter.
The Geiger counter is right. He wanted something that would set off the lowest setting.
All he needed was this real mild bit of radium.
Yeah, he had the ore. He had a piece of the ore. In fact, they weren't even able to find that. I don't even know what. I think he may have used it already. It put it on the Geiger counters, and they became part of the test strip.
Yeah, but what I thought was interesting in the interview for the news people, they had 5 leaded containers there. Like he must have had, half of a nuclear submarine there.
It's a little tiny glass jar in the middle of that holds like about 1 gram of the material, and that's so Grumman has to get rid of it.
What the TV show, the news showed, was this table that had 5 big lead containers, just like you use for radioactive. So they didn't even belong to him.
Not at all.
Well, and here's a problem with that, and I'm just speaking from law enforcement perspective. They weren't in the house; they were in his car, and any first-year law student could destroy that evidence in court, given the fact that, hey, anybody could have got in that car and put them in there. Did you find fingerprints on those containers that belonged to John Ford? They probably didn't even bother to do that.
They didn't even bother to look.
No, because they were playing the game their way, and so that wasn't something that. And I suspect that they knew that they weren't going to go to court. I'm back to that attorney initially. I think he was in the bag on the other side.
He was dirty. Let's just say how it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me, guys. You guys are pleased with the new attorney, though.
Yes, so far, I sure am.
Extensively, okay, and I made sure that John slept on it. He spoke to the guy himself, and I called him again before I sent any money to him or anything like that, or promised him the thing, because he wants to pursue this vigorously, and he also wants media attention on this.
What has he done so far? Actually done?
I don't know. I know he's filed a bunch of papers. He's filed all sorts of briefs, and he hired an investigator. And I've spoken with the investigation firm.
Let me tell you something. Hey, Joe, if he does want to get publicity, one of the first things he should do is inform us via you of all of the filings he does, so that we can make them public. And there is the response, counter response from the system. If he really truly wants to make it public, he should inform you, and you should let him know this. And because he would definitely want to know that, because it's actually public record when you file something.
Sure.
So
I'll contact him tomorrow morning.
I'd also like to know if he
answer the same day.
Yeah, I also would like to know did he find those letters that I sent to his office of help to him in realizing the setup for John and what transpired?
Yes, and every document he filed should be put up on the website with comments about what it means and what it implies.
Okay.
And this will help the legal publicity of the case.
The game plan is to let him get a little bit more familiar with John and spend some time with Joe and so forth. And then we were going to call his office and see if he would come on the show and do an interview.
He's had over a month to become familiar with the case.
Yeah. Well, we're getting ready to do that, right, MJ?
I said he's already had a month to become familiar with the case.
Right.
No, Rich, guys.
The way I see it.
Yeah, Rich wanted to break in everybody. Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Every time we've tried to get an attorney on here, the reasoning has been, we don't want to give up the ghost here on what the game plan is. And the one time we got a lawyer on here, It was a dud. So, I'm not. I think it's a jinx to bring the lawyer onto the show. So
could be, yeah.
His actions up here.
Let's just keep the. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up is you guys
for
said
John's best interest.
it's there was something that was said earlier about this interview with John that you guys did in September.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was something about he didn't know anything about corruption.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, or anything. Okay. Yeah. That doesn't even come close to adding up. In all the times that I've spoken with him in the years past, and any other person who has closely researched this, whether it be his longtime friend George Dixon or longtime advocate Alfred Lemberg, there's not one person out there who is familiar with this case who doesn't immediately understand the corruption behind the whole thing, and that includes John.
Right.
So I'm not sure what kind of damage has been done here to him, or if he knew somebody was listening in on that interview. But that's
a possibility. He may have been asked to withhold the information.
Yeah, I mean, that's just nothing against John, but that's a BS response.
Yes, but we have to be careful because if he's under the judgment of being mentally unsound, we don't need to be bringing up points that are contradictory.
No, that's what I'm saying to the audience here, too, because, I mean, there's trolls listening to the show tonight who are looking for any excuse to rip the rug out from under it and say, fuck it, he's insane. And this would be one more excuse. So if you're going to come on the air and say, well, in the interview, John didn't know anything about corruption, we have to put a little addendum on there and say maybe he wasn't allowed to say anything, because that's not the case. That's not the case at all.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I was just surprised to hear him say that to us, because
I was really
I mean, it's all through Elaine's files. It's in newspaper articles, et cetera, et cetera. So
I would have fallen on the floor if I was on that interview listening to him say that. It's just like
we were sitting down. So.
We were sitting down, but it was my jaw dropped a little bit. But we didn't want to pursue it and push him any more than what he said, because he really came across like, this makes me angry that everybody thinks that I knew more than what about corruption that was going on, and quite frankly, he had to know about a lot of the corruption. His mother was involved, and he ran for political office, and so they were deeply involved with politics, and
but you have to remember, anybody that was on Long Island in the 90s, all right, specifically in Suffolk County, and even more specifically in Brookhaven, knew that everything was corrupt. I mean, it wasn't just a matter of picking and choosing. You could call the highway department or the parks department or this or that, and there was always something going on. People, jobs being bought and sold, illegal sand mining. People didn't start getting arrested till the late 90s, all right, for major offenses, federal offenses. So obviously there's corruption, but did John have firsthand knowledge of it before anybody else? I don't know. All right. Maybe they thought he was just a good scapegoat and he didn't have any foreknowledge of this or direct knowledge. Okay.
Well, Long Island has always been a pig swell of mental depression, corruption. It's just a very dark cloud. Dark cloud has always hung over Long Island. Okay. In fact, the only thing nice you could probably read about Long Island is from Walt Whitman, but in Leaves of Grass. And the thing is, anything else would sound like, holy crap, who the hell wants to live here? And I know that because I lived there all my life. Right. I've only been out here for the last 8 or 9 years in the Southwest. So the thing is, there's always this overhanging dark cloud of depression and corruption at the same time. And my father was on the receiving end of that too, with what Joe was just talking about, because at the time that my father worked for the county, all the people in that union threw their weight behind the Republican candidate for county executive in Nassau, and this wasn't even Suffolk County, Galata. And by throwing their weight behind Galata, he swindled everyone for his own personal gain, and my father included everybody in the union to invest in what turned out to be a fraudulent front shell scam on medical insurance, and got everybody to put their money in that, and everybody got screwed, including my dad. And Galata walked away scot-free.
Wow.
This is the way things work on Long Island. It's we just had the town supervisor in Oyster Bay investigated, and he had to step off for bribing. It's outrageous and egregious. But this is standard way of doing business on Long Island, and New York City was that way for a long time. I don't know if it's as bad as it used to be. I really don't know.
It's probably worse.
I'm not sure that it is. I mean, on the real estate stuff, yes, but I really don't know because
now that Donald Trump is out of New York City, it can't be that bad.
The thing is, they try to take the flagrant part and make it more sophisticated or not so obvious. The whole key is to make it, smoke and mirrors.
In that interview, he mentioned the fire that was burning and wasn't being controlled or fought is because they wanted it to, they being the powers to be, because they wanted it to be condemned so that the real estate could be picked up really cheap, and then all these expensive houses and condos could be built there, or at least that's what
Pine Barrens.
According to John,
the Pine Barrens, that's what it was, right?
Yeah.
They didn't do anything with that land. So interesting. So
there was a major lawsuit from people adjacent to the Pine Barrens. I don't know the specifics of it, but it's a matter of public record once again. And somebody got paid a lot of money, and there were kickbacks. I mean, you have to know that.
Yeah.
Okay. You can't institute a lawsuit on Long Island without the expectation of giving some of it back. All right. That's just the way it is.
Well, everybody, it's
people here know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we've reached the end of this show, everybody. Good show. That went by quick already.
Oh yeah. Well.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for coming on and filling in. And Peter, I'll see if I can work on getting John on and you and Ken, so that you can be involved with the next interview.
Well, good night, everybody. Good night, everybody. Yeah, Rich, did you have one more thing to add? Go ahead.
I got the information on the John Ford website updated for his attorney info.
Good.
It's all on there.
Okay.
John, and go throw that website out again for our listeners too, Rich.
It's johnford.ufoteacher.com.
Perfect. Okay. And we'll see you next month, November 12th, 9 p.m. Eastern on Inception Radio Network. Good night.